We are back with one of our favorite newer guests here on America First. He is Project 21's Horace Cooper, Senior Fellow with the National Center for Public Policy Research. Horace, welcome back to America First.
It's always great to come on the program.
You just returned from the Lone Star State?
Yes, Point Blank, Texas, in fact.
And things, I gather, are a little bit different than in the swamp.
Absolutely. The panic isn't there. The ability to just operate and go on with normal. A lot of Americans don't know this, but when the governor of Texas issued his stay-at-home order, it explicitly exempted the exercise of constitutional rights.
Express verbis in the order?
Absolutely. So you haven't seen...
That's fabulous.
You haven't seen any of the restrictions on firearm usage. You haven't seen any restrictions on churches. Or even, what if people just wanted to exercise their right to protest? Under Governor Abbott's orders, those things are just as essential as our founders intended them to be.
Unlike other states where we saw the explicit opposite, where there's that video of a police officer saying to, I think it was to a pastor, then to a lady, a mother at a playground, that your rights are suspended. What is this, the Civil War? Is this Abraham Lincoln and habeas corpus? Where do you stand on the last 6 weeks of overreach by local governors? What is that awful phrase, the teachable moment here, Horace?
Well, there are a couple things. One big takeaway is that our Constitution was created and designed to endure and to cover all situations. There is not a COVID-19 exemption created, even though some governors think so.
That's great.
You know, I spent Easter in Texas, and on Easter Sunday, you were allowed to pull into the parking lot in your car and listen. But you know what?
I'm jealous now.
In the state of Kentucky, there was an order issued by the Louisville mayor saying to people that you'll be cited, the pastor, you could be arrested just for engaging in one of the highest Christian holidays in our faith. That you can't go and publicly acknowledge that.
But there's good news from out of Kentucky, isn't there, Horace?
There was great news. Judge Justin Walker issued an order countermanding the mayor of Louisville's order and saying that, in fact, it ran afoul of the First Amendment. And Justin Walker said, even though the state of Kentucky and the city of Louisville hadn't explicitly provided that your rights are protected, even because the Constitution hasn't gone away anywhere, that he was still going to be vigilant about that. That's the good news. The bad news is that he is one of the 193 judges that have been confirmed and that were appointed and confirmed by President Trump.
That record-breaking number.
But on the other hand, there are other judges that came under Obama, that came under Clinton. Those judges have not been as sympathetic to making sure that our rights are protected.
And this is a perfect case study in the two perspectives on the role of a judge, because it demonstrates what judicial activism is.
Absolutely.
And what the opposite of judicial activism is. Because this judge isn't, as an activist judge would, making legislation from the bench. He's doing the opposite and saying, excuse me, the Constitution is the Constitution always, therefore that's the guide stone. So it illuminates the difference perfectly.
I'll give you a good example.
Yes.
The Constitution expressly says government cannot restrict your religious practice. It says nothing about abortion. It says absolutely nothing about abortion. And yet, when Planned Parenthood went into the Fifth Circuit and said that when governors are restricting the access of those facilities, that constituted some kind of violation, and liberal district court judges said, yes, I'm going to recognize, and here's a distinction, that's a right that isn't in the Constitution, yet it's being vitiated. Here is a right that shouldn't have required going into court, but it is explicit and it's clear. It's a good thing that he was one. Judge Walker is one of the 193. And it's also good news that he's being appointed to the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals.
Wow. Finally, a little bit of common sense in the city that voted 95% for Hillary Clinton. We're talking to Horace Cooper of Project 21. Follow them at Project 21 News on Twitter. Senior fellow at the National Center for Public Policy Research, and a man who knows how to use the word vitiated. That's why we like him. Are you feeling good? Are you feeling optimistic about what you're seeing coming out of D.C. and elsewhere in the last few days?
I'm feeling very good about the circumstances. Now, one is I have had the benefit of spending a lot of time in Texas, which is rapidly reopening in a common sense fashion. In the state of Texas, people are expected to exercise good judgment, to exercise common sense. And that good judgment and common sense starts with people understanding that vulnerable populations need to be a little bit more protected than the broader population. But if you want work done on your property, if you want plumbing work, if you want any kind of carpentry work, there are plenty of people that are doing those kinds of activities. I drove by the Lowe's in Polk County, Texas, and every single car in the parking lot, all the spots were filled up. My point about this is...
And they hadn't banned selling seeds?
And the beauty is that people understand that services are the way that we stay independent and self-reliable, and that self-reliance is encouraged. So even though Texas hasn't officially reopened, so many aspects have stayed open. What you're likely to see is a huge differential in the unemployment rate of a place like this versus D.C. or even Virginia.
Yeah, and it really is a perfect exemplar of not just what we mean by common sense, but even in the classical sense, prudence.
Yes.
That this is, you don't unleash everything and think that it's party time, but there's an expectation that grown-ups can be prudent, and that's the message from Greg Abbott. And now, latest count, 20 other states of the union are easing the restrictions on business, on freedom of movement. And sooner or later, it's only going to be the holdouts that want to extort more money from federal government, like Governor Cuomo and Governor Newsom. No surprise there. We are talking to Horace Cooper, one of our favorite guests here on America First. Then your calls, 833-33-GORKA. That's 833-334-6752. Sound off. It's Friday. Ask Dr. G anything, and don't touch that dial.